Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live episode of To the Moon, Allison, where we talk about the top and trending works in science fiction, speculative fiction, fantasy, and romance. I'm your host, Allison Martine Hubbard, author of contemporary fiction and speculative fiction. I'm super excited to be joined today by author Andrew DeYoung, here to talk about the Temps. I don't have a gas mask. I kind of feel bad. I feel like I could be
Neither
able
do
to.
I
I'm
left
wearing
mine in the other room.
I'm wearing yoga pants, but I'm wearing all
That
black, so
works.
I kind of look more like a mime. It wasn't my intention, but I wanted to be comfortable. And for those who haven't read the book yet, first, go read it. And second, yoga pants is kind of a theme that
It
comes
is.
up often enough. Are you wearing yoga pants, Andrew?
I am not wearing yoga pants. I've got a comfortable sweatshirt though, so I'm
You look
good.
good.
I'm
You
good.
look good.
Yeah.
You're ready for the apocalypse, which,
Yeah.
as you can maybe tell by the cover here, I love the tagline. They're underemployed, underpaid, and trying to survive the end of the world while trapped inside an office complex. Who knew temp work could be so dangerous? Andrew, can you tell us a little bit about this book beyond that fabulous headline?
Yeah. So the core premise is that it's about a group of corporate temps, office temps, most of them fairly young, in their 20s. So young millennials or Gen Z, who get stuck in the office complex of a giant mega corporation that they work for, kind of a mysterious mega corporation that they work for
Delphi.
during Delphi Enterprises, very mysterious. During a global apocalypse, there's an attack that happens, um, and it happens during an all-company meeting. And the thing about an all-company meeting, this is actually taken from life. I know of some companies that have big all-company meetings, but only for the regular employees. So if they have temp
Black
workers,
badges.
yeah, if they have temp workers, contract employees, they're left behind. They can't go to the big special meeting. So that's what happens in this book is that, there's a big all company meeting. Only the regular employees are invited. The temps have to stay behind. But as a result of them having to stay behind, they're not outside in the giant corporate amphitheater when the sort of like gas attack hits, and they're inside and they survive. So the temps, the temporary employees, ironically, are the only ones who survive the apocalypse. And then they're just trying to figure out what's going on. They don't really understand the work they do for the company. They don't understand what the
One of
company
them,
does.
it's Jacob's first day, and he just keeps going, does anybody know what this company does?
I
Where are you
know.
asking that? I'm in the mailroom. I don't even know where I am.
Yeah, and the rest of them are just, they're making copies. They don't know what the company does. So that's basically the premise of the book, and they're just trying to pick up the pieces and figure out what happened in the world, what's going on in their own lives, the meaning of all of this.
Trying not to die. That's kind of
That
the
too.
first part.
Yeah,
I was joking. I feel like this book is The Office meets World War Z, but everybody
perfect.
is Ryan the Temp because it's just the temps. We're just going, what's happening and why am I here? I went to school
Yeah.
for this. I went to school for this.
I
Really.
went into thousands of dollars of debt for this, for the mailroom job,
I studied ancient mythology. Why am I here?
exactly.
And I felt like this is one of these books where when I found out about it, I looked at just the premise and said, sign me up. And then I actually got it and I went, this is a gorgeous cover.
Thank you.
I'm always kind of one who goes towards minimalist covers, but still one that's striking and that you just go, well, I have no
Hmm.
idea what's happening, but I'm going to need that. And I had no idea how much more you were going to get into themes beyond just things that are they're almost tropes now, the corporate greed, corporate conspiracies, but you get into ancient mythology and feminism. And I
Hmm.
assume you list that you were married, so I'm assuming your wife looked at this and made sure
Oh
it
yeah.
was appropriately feminist in so many places. But I didn't expect any of that from just this. So I don't know which drove which, if it was the themes that led to the plot or the plot that led to the themes. But overall, I wanted to talk to you about all of these things and not wearing a gas mask because that would make it hard to talk.
It is hard for podcasting, I think,
Yeah.
wearing a mask.
I mean, even just wearing my mask for COVID, I can still talk, but a whole gas mask, I would just look like a locust. We're
Yeah,
not
it's a
doing
situation. I mean, in terms of the themes, the thing that ultimately led me to the book first was thinking about um, kind of that predicament of being young and trying to make your way in the world and really struggling to. My own experience of that was, yes, I was an English major, a lot of school debt, didn't really get a good job out of college, and I didn't really know how the world worked.
Okay, every English major I know ended up being a teacher. You didn't follow that path? Because I thought that's the whole point of being an English major is you go teach elementary school.
For whatever reason, that just didn't interest me.
Oh, okay.
I thought for a second that I might become a professor or something like that, but that's just teaching. It just didn't pan out that way.
The kids are just bigger and it takes a lot longer to get there.
Exactly. More school, more debt. I just didn't go that path. I landed for a while at a ad agency as a project manager, kind of like dabbling in copywriting. And we had very large corporate clients around the Twin Cities here, which is where I live, Twin Cities in Minnesota. And they had huge office complex, and we would go on client visits where we would be walking through these like big shopping mall or airport concourse sized corporate complexes that housed 5,000, 8,000, 10,000 employees. And I think that's what kind of put it in my head, because, here I was, this English major working in advertising in like sort of a corporate job, not really always understanding what I was working on or understanding the business of the people, and just, wondering what my place in the world was. And so when I came to write this thing, I really wanted to write about that time of life, which I found to be, it's like existential crisis time of life, and it's very confusing. And for some reason, the notion of Temps, like a bunch of people my age or like the age that I was when I was going through this, stuck in this corporate complex, it sounded fun, it sounded exciting, sounded a little funny, and it was something that I could get out a lot of these ideas.
Yeah.
And of course, the connection with feminism and stuff like that, that was just kind of representing the concerns of me and a lot of my peers, because we were going through it all together, and feeling like a real like us versus the system kind of vibe during that time of our lives. So I think that all came out organically from me and the people that I was have been in community with at that time of my life.
Well, and there's a scene that happens really early on where one of the main characters, Jacob, is coming in and he doesn't know what's going on. And there's a conversation happening around him and he's just gleaning these terms. Mm-hmm. And it was just so perfect because I could have pictured this where they're using all these words and they're English, but they don't actually add up to English because they're all specialized terms. And it's like they're speaking in code and he's just trying to figure out, what does this company do? And the terms mean nothing to him. And he's just trying to figure out where to go. And turns out he's not even in the right doorway. And I've been there and I never worked in a large corporation like that, but I was an attorney. And so I was going to other buildings for depositions. I would be beyond lost going, okay, it says suite something, something. Where am I? I'm not even on the right floor, but I've got to go on this floor and then get checked in. I never worked for a large firm, so that wasn't really my experience, but I understood that part of it going, okay, to be feeling completely outside of this and trying to figure out where you're even supposed to go or why you're there and feeling, how did I get here and what's even happening? What are these words that are happening around me?
What is the meaning of this, and what does it have to do with what I'm doing with my life?
Probably very little, and
probably very little.
I think that's the big takeaway for so many of these characters. And one of the things I loved is you have kind of this core group of characters that's diverse, but none of them felt like token characters or in any way caricatures of these different places. So one of the reasons that we keep joking that I'm wearing my yoga pants here, and I don't do yoga. I'm not nearly flexible enough to do yoga. I would hurt myself if I did it, but they are very comfortable. Is that one of the characters, one that I loved. I don't know. Do you pronounce your name Swati or am I saying that wrong?
No, that's right.
So Swati is there, and her goal in life had always been, I want to open my own yoga studio. And she's there as kind of a teaching the employees, the full-time employees, for yoga lessons in this huge corporation. And when she finds the world falling down around her, she's just kind of there meditating through it, trying to get through it. Yeah. We find out so much more about her backstory, but at some point she and another character find the gym or the kind of the locker room areas that I never worked in a place big enough that we had a gym or any of this stuff, but some of you probably have and are like, yeah, the gym downstairs and there's lockers, and they get out of their uncomfortable clothes and all change into comfy clothes and going, in the new world order, we're all wearing yoga pants. I love it. Like, that was the pandemic and we all did wear, if we wore pants. some people just didn't wear pants, that we all switched into our yoga pants. And the fact that that was one of the things that when I worked in the corporate world, or at least in the legal world, the fact that we were always wearing these ridiculous, uncomfortable clothes, as if I'm a better attorney if I'm wearing shoes that pinch my feet. Go figure.
Yeah, it's a real thing. And in the scene that you mentioned, they kind of, it's two women characters who say that, in the New World Order we should all be wearing yoga pants, and they kind of blame uncomfortable clothes on the patriarchy, which I think is interesting and maybe accurate. So
that's accurate. And I will tell you that in many places where I worked, I was the only female, or at least the only female attorney. There may have been secretaries or folks, but I may have been the only female attorney. And sometimes I had bosses who didn't even know what to tell me how to dress, because they had certain requirements and didn't know how that translated into what women wear, and didn't want to get accused of sexual harassment by telling me I had to or could not wear certain things. And they're just like, girl stuff, I'm confused by all this. Please wear pants. Please wear something. Don't be naked. Basic work, go to court wear, do you have to wear nylons? All of this is kind of backdated stuff, but those are things I've explored in some of my writing as well. The idea of when an outfit is designed for male staff, and then how does that translate to female staff, and what does that look like? And I'm sure for some people they go, what does it even matter? And that's really the question. But if your job is on the line, if you're not dressed appropriately, and how that translates across gender and across race, and people getting fired because their hairstyles don't fit certain things. Yeah. I know, Andrew, you've got a controversial hairstyle right there.
I do. Very little hair, in fact, which my kids, I've also got kids, are not shy about commenting on. Daddy doesn't have hair.
Daddy doesn't have hair. That's so loving of them.
I
like to pat my gut and go, Mommy has a fat tummy. I'm like, thank you guys. You're all kind of responsible for that. But thanks so much for pointing that out. You guys go away.
Sometimes like, after Christmas, after the holiday season, I've eaten a lot. My kids will be like, you're squishy. And like, okay. Yep, thank you.
And that's why we wear yoga pants.
Right. Absolutely. That's something that should not go away, I think. Comfy clothes in the workplace. I mean, I think that is something that we should just make permanent.
Well, and it was the two female characters, and talking about there comes a point in the book, and I don't want to talk too much about what happens later on in the book, mostly because there were shocking twists, and I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't had a chance to read it yet, because it came out March 22nd. Am I pulling that data?
29. Real close. Yeah.
It's been out only about a month, so a lot of people are still discovering this. So please do go find it. I won't spoil anything here that happens, but as things are going on, they're talking about how do we create a new world, because I will say that the attack that happens outside, the thing that happens to the regular employees and spares the temps, isn't limited right there. And it's not clear right at first, like, did this just happen here? Oh no, it's taking out a lot of stuff. So they're looking at, okay, if we're going to do the new world, what are we doing? And sure enough, some guy right away is like, I'm going to do a Tony Robbins speech. And I laughed so hard through that part because sure enough, someone sees a power vacuum and is going to settle his butt in to fill it. Whereas the women characters are taking a time to pause, reflect emotionally on what's happening. And also just that concept of when everything's going wrong, you can only kind of handle so much of it, and how much of it influences you directly, people you love, specifically family and friends. And then everyone beyond that sphere just becomes just too much to process. And I know that we've had that as well in things like COVID and in crises and wars, that if it's one person we know who's in the hospital, it brings us up to this tension level. But when it's hundreds dying, it's a number our brains just are like, sorry, my brain shut down. I can't process that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. As you mentioned, there's a male character who steps in, and his response is, he's not qualified to be a leader.
He's not.
The only
do that are never qualified.
Yeah, his only qualification is that he decides that he's going to be a leader. Like, that's literally his only qualification, and he just kind of wills his way into being a leader, and a lot of people just accept it. But as you say, the female characters, they're kind of focused, I think, on what does it mean, like on a personal level? How do we deal with it? How do we deal with it mentally and emotionally? How can we as individuals and as a larger group, how can we sort of deal with this holistically and like create peace within a chaotic situation? To me, and I didn't write this, I actually wrote this in 2017.
So first off, you're a prognosticator, so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
And
a little scary.
sorry, everyone.
Well, I've read a few books. Paul Tremblay's Survivor Song was written before the pandemic, and he was worried about people not knowing what PPE was, like, personal. And then the pandemic came out, and he's like, "Oh, y'all know what personal protective equipment is. Thank you so much, COVID."
Right. Well, and to me, it connects the two female characters, Swati and Lauren.
And Lauren there, yeah.
During the pandemic, and during just a lot of chaotic things, some people will be talking about the importance of self-care in the midst of that, and the importance of taking care of ourselves emotionally in order to, be better for the world. Like we can't fix anything until we fix ourselves and live in community with each other. And to me, again, like I didn't write it knowing that this would happen and that a lot of people in the midst of the pandemic would be talking about the importance of self-care. But to me, it does connect with that. And I think that's actually a lot of bad things happened, since 2020. But that one is actually pretty good. I think that that people emphasizing self-care, even in the face of something catastrophic like a pandemic that's killing a lot of people, is really important and good, because one single human can't process it, can't do anything about it all by themselves. So taking care of yourself in the midst of catastrophe is actually really important for all of us.
Well, something you said, it tickled my brain, which is the brain, because this corporation has this massive processor called the brain that does a lot of the deeper analytics. Mm-hmm. And so when you said one person can't process all that leads to another one of the big themes. And we were joking before we went live that I was trying to share the link for folks who want to watch it live, because this goes live and then it also goes up to other podcasts. So if people are hearing this later, they're going, well, yes. And there's a picture. Yes, there's a picture. So people who are just listening, we also do a video version here. But this deals with ideas of corporate conspiracy and what is the corporation actually doing, and what are they gathering all that personal data on us for, and what are the maybe more sinister motives behind some of this. And then my posts were getting marked as spam, and we didn't know whether it was because I used the words corporate conspiracy or because a certain billionaire may have bought certain platforms and doesn't like other platforms. I'm not conjecturing. I don't know. All I know is you want to make sure people can find out about the book, and when it's getting marked as spam, and I mean, spam's delicious, but I'm not personally spam. There's a link.
No, this is good content. You're making good content.
I was trying to share it with people, and then I was laughing because I keep getting spammed on Instagram by the same variation of the same post with the same person's picture, and I'm going, how many times can I block you? It's like whack-a-mole. They keep doing new things, but then other things get marked as content or as spam instead of content. And then you've got something like the brain that does this analytical stuff based on data that you wonder how it gets. And I'm loving the fact that one of the characters, her thing was she creates those silly quizzes we all take and go, ooh, which girl are you from the Golden Girls or whatever? And then using that to extrapolate so much more about you. And she's just like, I like writing these quizzes. And it turns out she has, if I'm remembering correctly, she's got this background in psychology, and also she's the one who studied like classical mythology and ancient Greece and all these things. So she's a very deep thinker. And what is she doing? Asking you which Sex and the City character you most relate to.
Absolutely. And we've all taken those quizzes.
We have.
I have to admit, I've taken a lot of them in my day, and I've always wondered, like, is someone gathering information on me? Like, what's actually happening here? Is it just for clicks so that I'll get eyeballs for ads? Or is there something actually sinister happening here where I'm, answering questions about which Battlestar Galactica Cylon I am or something like that? But I'm actually like giving the government my information or something creepy. I did it in the writing. I kind of indulged a little bit in my more paranoid side. I just wondered, all these paranoias that I have, like, what if some of them were really true? And of course, this came up again recently when a certain billionaire acquired a certain social media platform.
No idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to say his name because maybe we're going to get flagged again. But
awesome.
but I had to wonder, like, why does he want this? is it just because he wants it, or is it because something else is going on? Does he want our data? And you mentioned, one person can't process it. Again, without giving too much information away, one person does try. At some point in this book, one person makes an attempt to process all the information from the company, all the chaotic information that the company generates, and make a sort of coherent narrative out of what's happening. And the only way that he can do that is by indulging in conspiracy theories, which I think conspiracy theories I find fascinating because so many of them are just outright lies.
Yeah.
QAnon,
Flat
anti-vax,
Earth.
flat Earth, like it's just nuts. But also, we live in a very complex world where some messed up stuff is happening. So there is kind of paranoid, some of the paranoid interpretations of the way things work are accurate. But it's just kind of the challenge of like, what does one person do with all of this, with this mess of modern life, with technological capitalism? What do we do with it?
Well, and one of the
do we
things
make
you even
sense of
point
it?
out is that it's part of that same drive from everything from religion to mythology is we're always looking at an overload of information and trying to find meaning in the chaos, and that conspiracy theories are just another way of doing that. They're kind of a maybe less educated way of doing that. Right. If you look at some of it going, oh yes, all the places from space we see, those are all fake because we're in a flat earth, and then there's people living below and they're going to come up and eat us too. I don't know. But all that stuff, it's just a way of trying to make sense of this. And especially when you're dealing with characters who are out of their element, they're in crisis mode, everyone they know is pretty much dead, they're isolated, that indulging in those things makes even more sense than just in a regular, every day. If he's down in the mail room, or if they're serving burritos in Chipotle, maybe they don't think about it, but with the absence of something else to do, indulge in conspiracies and check it all out.
Absolutely. A conspiracy theory is a way to simplify a lot of, there's so much information that comes at us every day that if you have some sort of conspiracy theory, it's almost like a filtering mechanism. That's like, well, I don't need to understand all the information. I just kind of fit into this category. It's a really complicated thing, but I'm just, as you can tell from the book, having read the book, I'm very interested in the way that people, they deal with the chaos of modern life, sometimes the chaos of like catastrophes that happen in the context of modern life. And then what do we do with it? How do we make sense of it to get through the day? Sometimes the ways we come up with are okay. Sometimes they're pretty messed up.
Sometimes they're toxic, but
yes.
I did love there's a part, and again, I don't want to get into spoilers, where it just kind of shows the different archetypes of how people respond to this. And there's some who are like, hey, it's the end of the world as we know it. Dance party time. We're going to have a dance party. Why not? And especially because the characters are primarily these younger people, because that's usually who Temps are. Although I have Temps, and when I have Temps, a lot of times other kinds of people you run into are people who are seasonal workers. Sure. So I ran into other teachers because I was temping during summers while my husband, who is a teacher, was off. And so teachers would end up being legal secretaries for a summer because they needed more money, because we don't pay our teachers enough. So,
that's a crime. That's a crime. Yeah. We should pay our teachers enough so that they could actually have a break during the summer. But that's a topic for another day. That's a whole topic.
But the whole idea of most of these temps being young, and sometimes the temps are a little older, but just the idea of them being in a place where they aren't necessarily in the job that they want to be in forever, and going, well, I'm here now, what do I do? And some of them having skills that they thought maybe weren't skills, but the person who knows how to use the frother at Starbucks, that actually is a skill, and we need those people.
I worked as a barista for a time. Really, this book.
Is this your autobiography, and you just decided to put a funny name on it?
It's a place where a lot of experiences that I have, and a lot of experiences that my peers in the early stages of our careers had, it just all comes to rest there. I was a barista.
Did you work at Chipotle?
I never worked at Chipotle, but I definitely had friends who did. I worked in a strip mall, and there was a Chipotle in the strip mall, and sometimes after work, we would like all go to a bar, and like you'd see the people from the Chipotle, and you'd see the people from Best Buy, and like we would just all become friends.
Just take out
So
your name tag and go party.
exactly. So I've been in those bad corporate jobs, those bad desk jobs that you don't know what's going on. I've been in those, service industry jobs, but I really like frothing the milk. I haven't done it for a while, but I remember I was pretty good at it.
Soothing.
Yeah, exactly. And not just getting the bubbles, but getting the actual froth, like, yeah, it was a skill, and it's underappreciated. I liked being a barista.
Well, and I would say that one of the things that we came back to with the pandemic was learning what we actually need to survive, and that sometimes these lower paying jobs are actually the ones that we need to have our society keep going forward, because if we don't have someone who can make our food or pick up our trash, things are going to be a big problem. Whereas, oh no, if the ad agency shuts down, no offense, Andrew, working at the ad agency, maybe not as important for a day-to-day basis on getting things to keep moving forward.
I agree. I mean, one of the things that attracted me to this concept originally was that the least valued workers were the ones who survived.
Yes.
The temps were the ones who survived.
And the temps shall inherit the earth.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe the temps should inherit the earth. The Chipotle workers and the food industry workers and the people who are doing meaningless work and making copies and making coffee. They deserve it. And the teachers. Let's throw the teachers in there.
Teachers too.
We mentioned teachers before. But it's not a heavy theme of the book, but I think it's something that some of the temps think about here and there, is that they want, like, they're in a corporation. The jobs that they want are the jobs that get paid a lot to do kind of nothing. And this is a thing that exists in the corporate world, is that a lot of the really highly paid jobs they have weird job descriptions.
Like,
and you're like, what do you actually do? And sometimes the answer is not that much in the like truly high paid corporate world.
Well, and that brings to one of the other characters, who is someone who comes from the world of, I work really, really, really hard and physically break my back. And that's Dominic, who comes in it from a place of, I actually do want to work in this corporation, and I will take any toehold I can to get in this door. And then, the moment he does, or shortly after he does, well, now the world's ending. So good job there. You made your way in. Too bad the house is on fire.
Yep. And he's working really hard in business school, at night school, which is another thing that just, like, I remember from my early days, that like a lot of us were doing like little certificate courses or associate's degrees and things, because, maybe we graduated from college with stuff that didn't turn out to be that useful. And we're like, okay, maybe
what else can I add?
What else can I add? Maybe I should get a degree in marketing to get into Best Buy or General Mills, or, I'm just kind of naming corporations that exist here.
Like cereal.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, you mentioned earlier, you said, don't English majors just go into teaching? I know a number of former English majors, friends here in where I live in the Twin Cities, who now do like copywriting or marketing strategy for big corporations, for like General Mills. They're writing copy about cereal.
Yeah, and I've done a little bit of copywriting, and I've had characters that I make be copywriters too, because there is something where there's this tension between someone who's been trained in creative writing, and then it's like, and now make it about an earring.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, what? I'm not explaining. No, just about that earring. I need about 50 words about that earring, but it looks just like that earring. No, but you've got to make it different.
Interesting.
No, it's not, but I've done it.
It's interesting that job exists. The job itself probably isn't very interesting. I have a friend. I won't name her name for privacy's sake, but if she's watching, she knows who she is.
Hi.
She did, for a time, copywriting for a retaining wall company. And it was like, oh man, you had to just generate copy about retaining walls for 40 hours a week.
Oh.
Real tough.
I was gonna say earrings sound much more exciting now compared to
than retaining walls. Someone's got to do that work, I guess.
Well, and for me, I came from more of a creative writing background and then went to law school. And I joke when people say, oh, what's your writing background? And I say, well, I learned how to write creatively. And then I had all of that beaten out of me in law school. Right. And my partner's going, stop it. The judge doesn't want to read that. The meter doesn't have time for that. And then all my pretty phrases would get crossed out. And I learned to be much more succinct. And then going back into creative writing, I learned to say, okay, well, find the balance there. Find the balance, because sometimes
Sure.
succinct is good and sometimes it's just soul deadening.
Is there anything about legal writing that you find helpful? Like, were there any helpful
No.
skills there? No.
No,
Okay.
I mean, there are, and I think the biggest thing, and this kind of goes into the idea of being an analytical reader, is the idea of issue spotting. So anybody who comes through law school, they know that's the first thing you need to do, because when you pass the bar, which I did, the first thing you got to do is, when you're reading stuff, you got to figure out, well, what are the causes of action here? And you need to figure out what's being brought up. So it's the same kind of thing when you're reading. And I know I've talked to people, and people read at very different levels. And I don't mean how intelligent they are, but just how much they process. And some of them, they really enjoy the characters or whatever, but the idea of reading deeper for themes, that's not something that necessarily interests them. They just want to get the feels and move on. And sometimes it also depends on the genre, because some genres don't necessarily lend themselves to some of those themes, or some authors just choose to really indulge in action or drama, but not necessarily explore those larger things. And there's nothing wrong with that, because readers want all types of stuff. And like I said, when I picked this up, I was drawn to it based on the concepts, not knowing that there would be these deeper themes, because I've read different things that are similar in nature that don't necessarily explore those themes. So I was glad that there was more digging I could do.
Yeah.
Rather than just like, oh, this is really cool. They're going through everybody's desks looking for stray granola bars.
Right, exactly.
You know, the desk workers, yep. They've got, oh, well, I found where this person has their Skittles stash.
We've got snacks. I mean, I don't spend much time in the office anymore, but when I did, you always knew who had snacks.
Yep.
I mean, I think that's a very important part of office life.
Well, and one thing that I did enjoy about being an attorney is whenever the court reporters would come by, because they would always try to be getting business. So they would always be bringing us fresh baked cookies and all sorts of stuff, because they'd want to be the ones to be hired back. We're like, oh, they're coming? What kind of cookies they bring? Oh,
yeah, exactly.
Like, not are they good workers or not? What kind of
cookies? Good cookies.
It's good cookies. That's
yeah.
the good stuff. But so, Andrew, this is not your first book. This is your second rodeo, at least the second one to get published.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about the first one and how we got from there to here, and whether that was the first one you wrote or just the first one that got to see the light of day.
Yeah, so The Temps is my first adult novel. My prior one was called the Exo Project, and it's a young adult novel, so for teens. And it similarly engages with end of the world themes. I don't know. I'm just like a dark thinker or something.
You know,
like
something
that.
We don't know, Andrew. Should we
I know.
I should have been wearing a tinfoil hat here, but
I need to lighten up a little bit for my next book. But both of them have been about the end of the world. That one's about space exploration and trying to find a new planet to replace Earth. I hope it doesn't get that dire. I mean, that connects back to a certain millionaire who seems to be interested in space exploration.
Don't give him ideas, seriously.
Yeah, so that's what that book was about. And similarly philosophical, although I think probably not quite as philosophical as the Temps is. The thing that I think it's important for readers to know about the Temps is that, yes, there is plot, there is action, there is character and story, but also the characters are very smart and they're always thinking. They're always thinking about things, and they're always thinking like, they're thinking about classical mythology or paranoia, or the meaning of life, or how hard it is to be a millennial, or stuff like that.
Or even, why am I still with this guy?
Right.
Why am I putting up with being treated this way? How did I end up living in a house where I'm the only person who has a job?
Right.
I think we've all had those points in our life where we go, how did I end up here?
Yeah. And that's kind of what I wanted with this book, characters who think, because the people that I know, like me and the people I know, were very like thoughtful people, and we maybe think too much like that. That just feels realistic to me. But anyway, to get back to kind of my trajectory. So the first published book was a young adult novel. It's not my first written book. I wrote a also young adult mystery, like a historical mystery, that got me an agent, but that book didn't sell. And then the next book did, and that was the Exo Project. From there, I started writing adult fiction because,
You grew up.
I grew up, or maybe I'm not very smart, and I'm like, I just want to change my brand every time or something. So I started writing adult fiction, and that's how this book came to be. I've written a couple books since, and we'll see if those find a place to land.
Well, I was going to ask, was it a hard transition to go from the YA to the adult world? And I bring this up because I have certain friends who they're still in the querying trenches and they're trying to figure out, okay, where do I get my foot in the door? And if I do, will I have trouble having to stay in that lane? And is this the lane I want to be in? Especially, it's that big concern of YA versus adult. Like, if I get published as YA or I get an agent as YA, am I going to be stuck in the YA channel? Or will I be able to also write for adult? Did you have that issue, or tell us about?
I kind of did. I mean, I don't think that that's necessarily an issue. I think just talk to your agent, and like if you
can
get
one.
Yeah,
That's the first part.
If you get an offer of representation with a YA manuscript or with an adult manuscript, but you know that you also want to write the other, you should have a talk with them before you sign with them. That should be one of the many questions that you ask, is like, let's say I want to switch categories or switch genres. Would you be okay with that? And see what they say. My agent was okay with it, but the funny thing that happened with this book is that he didn't like it very much.
He didn't like the Temps?
He didn't like the Temps. He said, this is just a zombie novel, and I can't sell a zombie novel.
Did he read the book, though?
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, we kind of had a disagreement. And the fact, an agent not liking a book, that's not against the rules exactly, but I knew that I had it kind of is, but I just knew that I had a problem, because if he didn't like the book, and more importantly, if he only saw it as a zombie novel, as an apocalypse novel, then he wasn't really seeing what the book really was. Right. I knew that he couldn't pitch me well to
he can't champion a book that he doesn't believe in, and that's one of the things for people who are in the query trenches still. A lot of times they go, but my book is amazing, and why doesn't it? And they forget that agents are inundated by just pounds and pounds and pounds of
absolutely.
Yeah, and they can only have so many clients at any given time. Usually, some maybe don't really pay attention to that, but generally they can only have so many, and they have to be able to champion each one of them. So even if they really thought it was good, if they aren't the right champion for it, that's not the one they can take. And if you already have an established agent and they're going, I can't champion this, then you have the question of, do I get a different agent? Do I change the manuscript? Do I trash the manuscript?
Right.
What did you do?
Well, I really believed in this book, and I felt like the book, maybe even more so than my first book, was very much me. Like, it's not the perfect book, but it's me. Like I was putting myself out there. It's very much the book that only I could write in a manner of speaking. Yeah. So I had the hard decision of saying, well, is any agent better than no agent, or is an agent who doesn't really believe in what I have to offer worse than no agent? And we parted company, and that was really scary. Yeah, thank you.
No, it is, and because there are people who are probably watching this now going, well, but it took me so long to get an agent, I couldn't possibly. And that's the problem, though, is if you have an agent who is doing your career a disservice because they aren't able to shop it to the right place, they don't have the right contacts, they don't believe in it, and they can't shop it in the right way, because if they're seeing this as a zombie novel, they missed the bus on this novel completely.
Exactly. So, and I mean, I mentioned that I wrote this in 2017, didn't get published until what year is it? 2022.
Yeah, it says 2022 according to my computer. I had to double check because I'm not always sure.
Well, that's a big reason for why it took so long, because, I wrote it, my agent read it, didn't like it. We parted company. I found ultimately this book was not sold by an agent. I now have an agent, but I got them with a book that I wrote even after the Temps. I just got picked up off the slush pile of a publishing company that happened to be, doing open submissions for a brief period.
And that sometimes doesn't always happen. And so sometimes people are like, wait a second, I don't necessarily, and I've talked to other authors who have gone through open calls, and then they did the same thing kind of backwards, where they may have gone to an open call, sometimes for underrepped writers, and then they have a book, and they have a book coming out, and they're still trying to get an agent going, I have a book coming out, and still agents are going, talk to me when I see your sales figures or something like that. It's
Absolutely.
hard.
It's hard out there. I mean, I just think that for anyone who's listening to this and in the query trenches or on submission or whatever, it's hard out there, but you just have to believe in yourself. And although it may be tempting to stay with someone who doesn't quite believe, or that you're not fully jiving with creatively, I think you have to find those people and hold out for those people who really believe in what you have to offer. And that's really scary because sometimes it means saying no to opportunities that don't feel quite right. But
Mhm.
I think if you hang in there, ultimately those kind of decisions pay off in the long run.
Well, it did for you because
It
now
did.
you have an agent who can help with the book after this.
Yep.
So do you have a book done that's getting shopped, or are you still in the editing process? How much can you tell us? I'm sure it's all a government secret. But
I'm in the editing process, and I'm also writing something new, which is, what
that is
everybody
boring
does.
to do that.
Yeah. So I'm, revising one thing, writing something new on another thing. And one of the funny results of, my leaving my agent after the Temps was, I kind of thought that nothing was going to happen with the Temps. And I thought that, well, maybe I should just do something completely different. I've written these two kind of like apocalyptic, weird, speculative novels, but maybe I should do something different. And so I kind of went in a more contemporary crime and like domestic direction.
Yeah,
And
which is
so
hot
that,
right now. So
which is hot. But that's the book that got picked up by an agent. But my agent is also open for stuff that's a little bit more like this, that's a little bit more
okay,
weird and
so you don't have
speculative.
to completely change who you are in
No,
order to do this. But I think a lot of us also have more than one trick. We're not one trick
exactly.
ponies. And so the idea of being, okay, am I always gonna have to write about the end of the world all the time? I can only end it so
I
many
really
ways.
don't want to.
I'm tired of doing.
It's bumming me out. It's starting to bum me out writing about the end of the world.
I'd rather
But
just kill people off with regular murders.
so one that's in the can is a little bit more like a contemporary crime novel that's like, set in the context of a family. Um, and that would be a departure for me. Do I publish it under a different name? Yada yada yada. Does it even sell? These are all questions. Who knows what's going to happen next? And then the one that I'm writing is a little bit. It's not end of the world, but it's a little bit more in this vein where I'm trying to do something a little bit, come back to something weird and speculative. So it's kind of that thing of, I guess, all my characters in this book have existential crises. I guess I'm the kind of writer who just constantly has an existential crisis of like, every time I finish a new book, I'm wondering, who am I? Who am I? And I'm trying to reinvent myself every time. I need to stop doing that. But all you can do is write the book that is burning to be written.
And that's totally true, because you can't. I know some people who have the approach of, well, writing is my job and I set aside 2 hours every day and I crank out words. But I know for me personally, at least, when I try to write that way, I can crank out words. They're terrible words. No one
Yeah.
needs to be reading them. It's that book that's the one that's burning to be written. That's the one that comes out and I go, ooh, okay, there might be something here. So I'm glad you figured out, for at least your existential crisis of the moment, that you're like, right now I want to be over here, and now I'm going to come over here and do this. And hopefully it sounds like the agent you have now is open to those kind of things and isn't like, no, you're crime guy now. And you're going to be, we're going to change your name to Crimey McCrimerson. That's your new name. You like
I
that
mean,
one?
I can certainly change my name if that helps.
Whatever.
If that helps. Authors definitely do that. They write under multiple names. It certainly makes things more difficult, always following your gut sometimes, especially if your gut is telling you different things at different times.
My gut has too much coffee in it and is not to be trusted.
Yeah, exactly. But this is supposed to be fun and meaningful, this thing of writing books. So it may as well keep it that way as much as we
I
can.
appreciate that. Well, and we've gone for plenty long, so I should let you go to be able to go back to writing and editing and doing all those things and figuring out your new pen name. If you have a suggestion for Andrew's new pen name, go ahead and leave it in the comments. He will probably ignore all of them, but he's open to some of them.
Awesome. Crimey McCrimerson is you've already put that on the table.
Yeah. Good to know. It's good to know.
We'll consider it.
Well, we'll figure that out. Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us. Thank you, everyone who's been watching or is listening to this. If you're watching the replay on YouTube on the Vox Vomitus channel, please make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss anything on To the Moon Allison, Vox Vomitus, or Let's Scare Jennifer to Death. Please go ahead and join me next month when I'll have Abigail Tyrrell, contemporary romance author, joining me to be talking about all of her swoon-worthy people. There will be no world ending in any of those books, I promise. And if you're joining us tomorrow on Vox Vomitus, we'll have Nancy Bilyeu talking about her new historical fiction. So thank you so much. And okay, Josh actually is voting for
All right, we got one
He's
vote.
voting for Crimey McCrimerson. I
Winner.
don't think we're really going to be doing that, but if we do, we'll let you know. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Andrew. We'll see you next
Thank you.
time.
Bye-bye.